My job in this election is to convince people that as hard as it is, change really is possible if we do some important things right now to change Washington, not just to change policies, but to change Washington. I mean, the Democratic Party is actually more unified than these primaries suggest. Senator Clinton and I have a real argument, but it's not that much about policy for the most part. I mean, whatever differences she and I have, they pale in comparison to the differences we have with John McCain, who I believe wants to continue George Bush foreign policy and George Bush economic policy in a way that is going to keep us on the wrong trajectory, the wrong path. So I'm confident the Democrats will be unified in November, and we're going to attract a lot of independents and some Republicans to the idea that we've got to change the country. But right now, on May 6th, here in North Carolina, the question you have to ask yourself is, who can best lead that Democratic Party to deliver on change? And this is where there are big differences with Senator Clinton and myself. And I'm just going to name three. Number one, I think there is a difference in our attitudes about special interests in Washington and how much they dominate the debate. In August of last year, while we were in a debate, Senator Clinton was asked about how much money she was getting from PACs and lobbyists, and she said, well, lobbyists are real people. They represent real Americans. Her basic suggestion was that was part of the system that was a given. Well, I don't think that that's a given. I think they are part of the problem. We have not been able to solve health care for decades now, and part of the reason is the drug and the insurance companies spent $1 billion over the last 10 years in lobbying and campaign contributions to prevent change from happening. Same is true on energy. We've been talking about energy independence since the 70s, since many of us were kids. Yet year after year, the only thing that's changed, we actually import more oil than we did back in the 70s. ExxonMobil made $11 billion for 2 consecutive quarters, and everybody here is paying $3.70, $3.80 at the pump. Why is that? Well, part of it is Bush put Cheney in charge of energy policy. Mr. Cheney met with the renewable energy groups once, the environmental groups once. He met with the oil and gas companies 40 times. That's part of the reason. But part of it is also that the oil and gas companies have dominated every energy committee in Congress and have been setting the agenda for too long. So I disagree with Senator Clinton that that's a fixed part of the system. And that's why last year I passed landmark ethics reform legislation that would forbid lobbyists from giving gifts and meals and providing corporate jets to members of Congress, and they'd have to disclose who they were getting money from and where they were sending it to. And that's why at the beginning of this campaign I said I wouldn't take PAC money and I wouldn't take money from lobbyists. And people weren't sure how we were going to finance our campaign, but we financed it because you, the American people, have given $25 or $50 contributions. And that means I'm accountable to you. And that's part of the change that has to take place in our politics. And Democrats have to stand for the proposition that the days of the lobbyists setting the agenda in Washington are over, that they have not funded our campaigns, they do not run our White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people. They certainly won't when I'm President of the United States of America. That's point number one. Point number two is the need to be honest about how we're actually going to solve problems. How are we going to get results, as David put it? And I think this debate around the gas tax is a perfect example, a perfect metaphor for what's been going on in Washington. Senator McCain was the first one to propose a gas tax holiday. And then Senator Clinton immediately said, me too. And most of you probably have been reading the reports. If we suspended the gas tax for 3 months as they proposed, the most you could hope for would be a 30-cent a day savings for a grand total of $28 for the entire summer. That would be the savings, best case scenario, that you would get. But the fact is, we tried this back in Illinois, back in 2000, and it's been proposed in the past, and other states have done it, and typically what happens is you eliminate the gas tax, and the oil companies simply make up the difference. They fill the gap. They sop up whatever perceived savings the consumers might have you're paying the same amount of gas, except now we no longer have that money going into the Highway Trust Fund that builds our roads and our bridges, keeps us safe, and puts thousands of people here in North Carolina to work. It's a shell game. And Senator Clinton's own people to the Washington Post said, well, we don't think this is really going to work, but it's good politics. And when she tried to find some people to speak out on behalf of this program, she couldn't get any of her own supporters, including Governor Easley right here in North Carolina, to say it was a good idea. So instead, she got a lobbyist from, guess who? Shell Oil, to say what a good idea this was. Now, that's just not honest politics. What is true is people need real relief. I meet folks all the time. They can't get to their jobs. Sometimes they can't get to a job search. They're out of work, but they can't fill up the gas tank to go drive to apply for new jobs. So people need relief right now, right here. And that's why what I've said is let's put in place the second part of a tax stimulus package that I proposed a long time ago to get some immediate money into the pockets of people where we know it's going to get to those folks. So we know it's going to get to you. And let's put in place a permanent middle-class tax cut for families who really need it, so that the families are getting $1,000 per year to offset not just the rising cost of gas, but food and other necessities. And senior citizens get a break from taxes altogether on Social Security income if they're bringing in $50,000 a year or less. And homeowners who don't itemize on their tax forms, they get to deduct their mortgage interest the same way people with wealthier people who do itemize their deductions get a tax break. So that's a way to deal with the immediate burden that people are feeling. But long term, everybody here at CREE knows that if we're going to tackle gas prices, then we've got to use less oil. And that means we're investing in alternative energy. That means that we are investing in the technologies required to make cars more fuel efficient, and we're raising fuel efficiency standards. And that's why I've proposed putting $150 billion not only into clean energy around transportation, but across the board. And that will spur on the kind of innovation that we're seeing right here at CREE, producing green jobs all across America, investing in solar, investing in wind, investing in biodiesel, investing in new ways of lighting, new ways of heating homes, making buildings more energy efficient, making our entire economy more energy efficient is a win-win situation for everybody. It's a job creator, and that's what's going to be bringing down gas prices. And so the question is, are we going to keep on doing what Washington does, which is use gimmicks to get you through the next election, or are we going to say this time it's going to be different, and we're actually going to tackle problems, face up to them, and make sure that 20 years from now our children aren't looking back and saying, why is it our folks didn't deal with this problem and now we're paying $10 a gallon gas? That's one of the choices that's at stake in this election. The last difference, I think, between Senator Clinton and myself is I think that we've got to unify the country, and that means we can't be obsessed with the bickering and the name-calling and the back and forth. And that's not just between Democrats. Obviously, it's mostly between Democrats and Republicans. I'm a proud Democrat, but I'm a prouder American, and I think it's important for us to be able to speak to each other and disagree without being disagreeable, and start actually being practical, applying common sense, not applying ideology or politics to problems, but actually believing that we can work together to get things done.